going on, guys? My name is Tommy. His name is Achilles. He likes to lay on my keyboard now because he's a good boy, but he's going to be talking to us today. Welcome back to another episode of the Ancestry Anthology. Today, the Goloma, I don't know how to say it, but coming out of Lost Omens, the Mwangi Expanse, and to you. Remember, if you're liking what you're seeing, to like, subscribe. What do? Achilles, they purr and say nothing, I guess. Remember to purr and say nothing. Stay caught up with all your stuff. Now let's dive in. My god, I haven't said this in so long. It feels good to get back to these videos. I don't know how many of the Paizo folks are watching this, but if you are, thank you for putting out this super cool content. It's kind of reignited a fire in me to put out videos and stuff. Reading through Lost Omens Mwangi Expanse has inspired me to deep dive into the tales and mythology from that part of the world like nothing has before. Could I find something that looked exactly like the Goloma? No. But my guess is, if one dives real deep, they in fact could find something that resembles these. That's a lot to take in. At first glance, I thought that thing on top of their head was a mask. No, that's literally their face. Those green orbs, not way too much materia in that mask. No, eyes, as well as the things coming out of their mane. Golomas, I sit here and question if I should pronounce that Goloma. I'm not sure. I think I like the other better. Golomas are humanoids with rough skin, ranging in color from brown to ebony. Their fingers and feet are coated with a very thick chitin. Their face, also made of chitin, resembling a very smooth mask. The back of their head is covered in black hair, which, again, filled with tiny, peering, gelatinous, shining eyes. In an ancient story, long ago, a calamity struck the planet. Only the Golomas and others who hid from said calamity were spared, but Golomas were then hunted by new two-eyed people who were hungry to take their eyes to replace their own. This mentality has been very ingrained into their society. To be exposed is to be vulnerable, to trust a stranger is deadly, be vigilant at all times, a very deep inbred anxiety. Golomas literally have problems distinguishing specifics. They can remember large fields, commonalities. They're very on the borderline of hypervigilant, observant, but have problems remembering what specific objects or specific creatures look like, which of course feeds right into that not sure if friend or foe. As you might imagine, thus the Goloma's true names are kept secret amongst their people, because there are a million cautionary tales about true naming, so you shouldn't do that. Amongst other cultures, they'll use sounds from Aklo, Nekril, to make strong, big, scary reactions, because indeed perpetrating this, where very terrifying, can often hide the scared individual underneath. My god, this races me in my teen years. Anywho, rolling up a Goloma gives you 8 hit points. They are medium creatures with a speed of 30 feet. They're very fast, as you think you would be when you are run from everything forever and ever. They receive ability boosts to wisdom with 1 freebie and 0 flaws. They begin play speaking Goloma Mwangi and additional languages equal to their int, meaning that today we're talking about a race that begins play not speaking common. More on that after the mechanics. In addition, the Goloma literally have eyes in the back of their head. When they use the Seek basic action, they can look for creatures in 2 areas instead of 1. If precision is necessary, they got 2 30-foot cones or 15-foot bursts within line of sight instead of the 1. For our heritages, the Farsight Goloma gets low light vision. Neat. Yeah, I guess I'd be scared too in this setting if I didn't have dark vision and I knew what existed when the sun went down. The Frightful Goloma is trained in Intimidation, or another skill if they already got it, and they get Intimidating Glare as a bonus feat. But with all the eyes and things, an Insightful Goloma gets a +1 circumstance bonus to perception DCs against attempts to lie, and to their perception to sense motive. Vicious Goloma gain a claw unarmed attack that deals a d6 of slashing damage in the brawling group with the agile, finesse, and unarmed traits, so they make alright rogues. Or archers as well. Anybody who has a free hand now has a pretty darn good weapon. Neato. The Vigilant Goloma may cast Detect Magic as a cantrip at will. In addition, their awareness allows them to notice magical traps easier than others. Their proficiency rank in perception is 1 step better when attempting to detect magical traps. So your trained proficiency is expert, expert is master, and master is a legendary. That's huge. That's bumping up a huge boon against a thing that would potentially be very painful. That's downright playable. As for our feats, first up, Catch the Details. Gets you trained in society and gets the Eye for Numbers skill feat, or something else if you would already be trained in society. Goloma Courage, when you roll a success on a saving throw against a fear effect, you get a crit success instead. as well as a +1 circumstance bonus to will saves against said fear effects, and a +2 circumstance bonus to your will DC against attempts to demoralize you, which is huge when we think about how often that third action is intimidate to demoralize. Goloma lore gets you trained in stealth and survival, as well as their lore, or an extra thing if you already had something like this. Pierce the darkness gives you eyes that have adapted to see in all circumstances, even without light, giving you dark vision. Of course, you needed low light vision to have this, whether you got it from being like a Goloma Azamar or otherwise. Next up, watchful gaze. For one action, you gain all-around vision until the start of your next turn, which lets you see in all directions, and for one action, you can't be flanked. That's almost as good as raising a shield. In some cases, that stacks real gross on a Golema fighter who's flanked or is like the only front line. One action, beat the shit out of somebody with your, like, long sword, I suppose. One action, watchful gaze, remove their flank, and then raise shield. That's a pretty strong buff, I like it. All-around vision is one of those monster abilities that it kind of sucks that the Goloma doesn't have on just all the time, but since it only costs one action in a world where sometimes that third action just doesn't get used very often, it feels like at least a fair trade in combat. At 5th level, Ambush Awareness is a +2 circumstance bonus to perception checks attempted as initiative rolls. If you tie with an opponent, you go first. Protective Claws gives those claws of yours the parry trait, feeding right into that defensive build that seems to be built in here. Constant Gaze, if you took Watchful Gaze, says that you cannot be flanked by creatures of your level or lower, even if you haven't kicked on Watchful Gaze. For that, eventually, if you make it this far, here's your all-around vision. Defensive Instincts, for one action if you are adjacent to at least 2 enemies. You get a +1 circumstance bonus to AC until the beginning of your next turn and step. 2 for 1ing the action economy is pretty good. Arcane Sight at level 13. When you are searching, you gain Detect Magic unless you choose not to, really preventing you from having to shout, "Hey, I cast Detect Magic DM" at the top of your lungs. See the Unseen gives you the ability to automatically put creatures to hidden within 5 feet of you if they were undetected and your level or lower. And True Gaze, for one action once per hour. You get the effects of a true seeing spell. Of course, the perception race would have that. That's pretty darn good. The mechanics of this Ancestry feel very much like their flavor. We assume everyone's coming after us, we're a very hyper-vigilant species. We're also kind of scary looking, but we're only scary looking because we learned to be that way to protect ourselves. That said, I do wonder how many GMs will house roll that a Goloma begins play speaking common if you wanted to play this outside of the Mwangi Expanse. I suppose that's the nature of the rare tag. Someone can do it if they want to make the game work, but if it feels jarring for you, you have that out. I have to also say, I really like the fact that it's written in their flavor text that Goloma perceive the world differently. It makes them feel not just like a different kind of humanoid like often the various ancestries and races and things in games like this do. Even 2 humans on planet Earth perceive the color spectrum slightly differently than one another, so it makes sense that non-human species would have something like this going on for them, and I think it's a really cool touch. Playing them, they seem, like I said, very built in for anybody who wants to be up in the front taking damage. Odd, given that, well, they're afraid of a lot of things, but it's a chunky amount of hit points, good amount of speed, lots of ability to protect oneself from the horrors of melee combat, while also having outs versus invisible creatures, while having outs versus being flanked. It's got a lot of good tech in-house, I gotta say. Anyway, I've rambled enough. What do y'all think? Are we rolling them up? Have you played them? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you guys, as always, so much for hanging out. Next week, I'm gonna bop out the Anthology, I think. Till then, we'll see you next time.